All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Waterside Chat here on the Hydrologic Vlog. With me today is Mike Unger, the COO of USA Swimming. Mike, welcome. Hope everything's going well with you in quarantine.
Yeah, thanks, Kent. Appreciate it, and happy to be on today.
Excellent. Well, we asked you in. We want to talk just a little bit about what's going on with USA Swimming and especially the Olympic trials. So could you talk just a little bit about the process of working with FINA and the USOC in moving, the Olympic trial dates and everything that kind of went into that?
Yeah, it was a big process. It was very interesting because almost day by day things were changing. We left to meet in Des Moines, Iowa, one of our Tier Pro Swim Series meets in early March, and then in the course of days, a couple of weeks, things were just so fluid and changing so often. So it was finally a notice we sent on to the U.S. Olympic Committee, U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, to ask them to request of the IOC to postpone the Olympic Games. We did that on a Friday. On a couple of days later, I think it was 2-3 days later, the IOC eventually said, yeah, it was going to postpone the games, but didn't actually give a date. So here we are now. It's hard to plan when there is no plan.
Oh, exactly.
So it wasn't until, it was 2.5 weeks ago, actually, when the IOC gave new dates. We were already in the process of trying to figure out those, like if the IOC had picked exactly a year later, what we would do with the trials, if they picked 54 weeks or 51 weeks, or we were just trying to have all these different combos. So we eventually got the dates, and it was exactly 1 year. But the problem and challenge is that the College World Series, the NCAA's College World Series in Omaha, we had an overlap, but they're because of their schedule and their calendar, the overlap was going to be even greater. Like entire trials were going to overlap with the College World Series.
Oh, that's not good.
No, not good at all. So as it turns out, though, our national team coaches got together and decided instead of having 27 days between the trials, the end of the trials and the start of swimming in Tokyo, they wanted an additional week, 34 days. That allowed us to then push to the front side of the College World Series. So we still have an overlap with the College World Series, but it's only a couple of days on the front end. But to answer your specific question, sorry to be long-winded, but it's a very complicated topic. There are 13 different entities that we have to talk to get the trials dates from our steering committee, our national team coaches, even our athletes we check with as well, our national team staff, our managing director of the national team, Lindsay Mintenko. We talked to the U.S. Olympic Committee. We've talked to NBC. We talked to FINA. We checked the dates of qualifying from FINA. We checked the entry deadlines for the Olympic Games through the IOC. We talked to NBC. We talked to, I don't know. It goes on. And then you have the venue, College World Series, NCAA, hotels, all that stuff had to be kind of laid out. It was a frantic 2.5 weeks or so to try to get all that stuff pieced together.
Wow. So basically what you normally guys have time to do in basically 3.5, almost 4 years, you had to do in 2 weeks.
Well, that too, Kent, as well, that we had to do it, and also while everyone was watching. So we normally can come up with dates and vet all the different steps with broadcasters, with the USOPC, and we do normally vet all of that quietly 3 or 4 months after the Olympic Games are over. No one's paying attention to us at all. Here, everybody was paying attention, and it was quite stressful, and we took a lot of energy from a variety of people, but ultimately we were able to get it. And now the dates have been announced. They're June 13th to 20th of 2021.
And what does that do to the qualifying period for the athletes? Is that, if I already had my cut, say, do those still count, or is there a new qual period?
Yeah, it's a great question. The qualifying period, so we're going to assume for a second that health restrictions are not in place so that we can have a full trial of, right now we have 1,213 athletes qualified.
Wow.
Starting from November of 18 through the first week in March, we had 1,213 athletes qualified. we were expecting another couple hundred to make the cut in the last 3 months or so, leading into the trials this year. And so we would have expected somewhere about 1,430 to 50 athletes. Our goal was actually 1,400 to 1,500. So we were going to be right on. Now we're in a dilemma because we want to allow athletes to still have a chance to qualify. But if we leave the trial standards exactly where they are, that might grow the meet too large.
Mm-hmm.
But we also don't know when pools will open and when people can train and have competitions. And so with all of that, we're in a very much a wait and see period right now. We don't want to set new standards or even retain the existing standards right now because we just don't know. And so we're kind of we haven't announced anything. We've said we will announce something, but once we know more information. So that's the status as it is right now. But those that have qualifying times already, we certainly hope they will be in the meet. I already know from some college coaches, they have a stack of, athletes are retiring. They're not going to stick around. I mean, I think those that had a chance to make the Olympic team will certainly want to stick around. But if you were going to maybe get 75th place in the men's 100 butterfly, maybe you won't stick around. Maybe you'll graduate from college and move on. So a lot remains to be seen.
So obviously that kind of leads to my next question, which is, it seems like a lot is going to be up in the air for a while until we hear something about social distancing, how sports are going to work. What does that mean for the rest of, I guess, the 5th year of a quad plan now because swimming works in quads on this level. So, adding a 5th year for the first time is a little different.
It's tremendously different. We are talking about the oxymoron itself, which is a 5-year quad, right? Which makes absolutely no sense. But that's what we're talking about. And I guess we'll have a 3-year quad after this, leading into 2024. It has thrown everything into a bit of uncertainty for sure. Clubs don't know when they'll be up and running again. Athletes don't know when they'll be swimming again. And many of there's 3,000 clubs in the U.S. A lot of those are smaller clubs that operate on a much more tight budget and might not have enough money to have them last through a very lengthy period here. We're actually trying to initiate some stimulus packages from USA Swimming through USA Swimming funds, but also through different ideas that we have. And we'll be announcing that hopefully within the next couple of weeks. We have a board meeting next Friday, so that will hopefully get finalized at that point. But trying to financially help clubs, but also, as I said, with ideas, and having the local swim committees, the LSCs, also help those that are able to do so. And so this time it's fraught with some uncertainty for sure for many of these clubs. And we're trying to communicate. Our goal is to communicate with all 3,000 clubs. Our budgets are, we're not spending money in 2020, but a lot of that money gets pushed to 2021. Like for instance, there's no Olympic team training camp this year, but we hope there'll be one in 2021. So that's the type of stuff that we're looking at. Obviously we're not traveling. Meets are being postponed or canceled for an extended period of time. So it's a tricky time for sure.
What you talked a little bit about the LSCs, and I've seen a lot of stuff where, especially like Southern California and Florida, are offering some grant assistance and some money. You said USA Swimming was looking at doing something. What have you guys had conversations with any of the other NGBs or federations as far as things they may be doing that you guys are looking at?
Yeah, most certainly we're checking with the other NGBs. We're watching what it's funny. I've started playing tennis recently, and I'm now a USTA member, and I get emails all the time, and I'm taking those emails and passing those on to our club people to say, hey, look. I mean, they in fact we announced today we were eliminating all sanctions through the month of May. And just 2 days ago, the USTA did exactly the same thing.
Oh, wow.
So, we are looking at how we can work. There's an example of, I don't want to announce a program before it's actually approved, but, we're looking, USA Swimming used to take a 5% or takes a 5% from the Swimathon program,
Mm-hmm.
to fundraising program. And we're looking at, hey, maybe we won't take a 5%. We'll let the club keep all of that. Not that that's a lot of money. You know, if you're raising 50K, hey, that is some money. And
Mm-hmm.
that was something that went to our USA Swimming Foundation, but we're thinking that it's more legitimate for that to stay with the club.
Excellent. So obviously, kind of just to wrap this up and obviously let you get back to the important stuff.
Oh, I'm fine. You ask all you want. It's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and this is something we're hearing on the aquatic side a lot. Obviously, we're seeing, Minneapolis kicked it off with closing all of their pools for the year, not going to open up until next summer. We're seeing we've got over 20, 25 different either cities or areas that are shutting everything down, some to save money, some just to, keep in the social distancing. Obviously, that's going to affect our clubs greatly. Is USA Swimming put together any kind of a task force from the board or anything to investigate how we go about being the sport we are in what could be the era of social distancing?
Completely agree, and it's a big challenge. You mentioned Minneapolis. There's a handful of other cities that have closed pools for the summer. I think it's something, we have a board meeting, as I mentioned, next Friday. It's something we'll be talking about. We have a roundtable. We call it the CEO roundtable. Every other Friday, we put together club leaders to talk about their situations. These are clubs, generally, they're the larger, more successful clubs in the country, but we have put a group together to talk about exchange of ideas on what they might do. These closures have taken place over the last 5 weeks, thereabouts, and we're going to have to figure out, how do we reopen? There's been talk that, and there's reports that chlorine is okay in this situation, but the challenge is, if you're going first in a lane and I'm going second, and I come in and touch the wall, I'm going to be breathing on you.
Mm-hmm.
Or in this general vicinity. The 6 foot theory there is or 6 foot distancing is not really possible. But different ideas about taking kids and put them at different ends of the pool, and separating by 25 yards, let's say, doubling instead of having 6 lane 25-yard pool, 6 kids swimming, what other avenues could you have to keep that going? But clubs of 200 or 300, that's going to be that's a drastic change. The other thing that's really important is that the youth of America have not been exercising as they once were in the last 5 weeks, and we want to be on the forefront of saying, how do we get back to sport, but doing it safely, carefully, but getting back, most importantly. And so all that's being talked about.
Obviously, we're hearing now with the president talking about putting together sports leaders. We've seen a number of names out there about how do we get sports back? Is it with or without, people in the stands? Do we get the athletes back to participating? Obviously, those are a lot of things that, USA Swimming has to look at when we host our different, meets. Do you really see, and I guess this is more of a personal opinion than anything, do you really think that looking at where we're at now, that we'll be back in the water by the end of the year? Or is it really just more of an up in the air?
I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah.
We have plans in place from that we're thinking about if we're able to start again June 1, July 1, September 1, January 1. We have all of those kind of we're coming up with the primary plan, a secondary plan, a tertiary plan on many different fronts. We realize that the end of summer championship competitions likely won't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we kick the year off from there? If we were able to have a competition in August, could it be a kick off the year versus finish the year type competition? But we also want to be mindful of not putting undue pressure or unnecessary pressure on coaches or athletes or parents that we're setting up these meets and not being aware and respectful of, obviously, health department restrictions. So, no crystal ball here. No one has one.
Yeah.
You know, and so we're being very mindful. We're being respectful, doing our part by, you know, social distancing and quarantining and all that. What more can you do right now? You know, here's another thing. We rescheduled our Olympic trials next year, but we don't know whether there'll be public gatherings by then. We have no idea. I'm not being an alarmist, but we have to. We work in reality.
Yeah.
Planning.
A realist.
Planning in a major event like that, we have to be mindful of that.
So you did talk about a little bit with the, you know, our youth of America right now are not exercising unless they're, you know, getting out with mom and dad or doing something like that, but not, especially from the athlete's perspective of competitive athletes, they're not exercising. What kind of resources do you guys or is USA Swimming offering for things like, you know, at-home workouts, any of that kind of stuff, or even on the mental side of it? Because I know I've read a lot of articles concerned with elite athletes and their mental state when they're not able to compete.
Yeah, so a couple things there. We have issued some guidelines to clubs as far as dry land workouts, but with coaches observing from remotely through Zoom. In fact, we actually are offering to clubs that don't have Zoom. We're trying to start a program that we're able to offer them Zoom. So
wow.
One thing for our clubs. But we have some insurance complexity there as well that we have to be mindful of, that, you know, we just don't have people exercising without supervision.
Yeah.
Our insurance requires that we do that. When you talk about, we've kind of gotten over those hurdles, and we have had some steps that we've been able to provide to clubs. On the mental training side and on the mental health side, we have taken some great steps on that. We have worked with a company called Talkspace, specifically for our national team athletes and coaches, that we've been able to offer. There have been weekly national team athlete and coach meetings on which we have had some of the sports psychologists that we work with through the U.S. Olympic Committee in particular, Sean McCann, and he has taken them through usually a 15 or 20 minute little session. One of the most important and interesting things is that at the end of the season, which would have been March for lots of high school swimmers or college swimmers or NCAA or sectionals, all those meets that were taking place in March into early April, zone championships. At the end of a season, there is this emotional release, physical and emotional release, mental release from having competed, whether it's at your major meet, whether that your meet has gone well or not, there's still that release. And athletes and coaches too weren't able to do that for the most part. Yeah. And it's almost a mourning period, listening to Sean McCann tell us, but so there's almost a mourning period of like, oh, that didn't happen in my life. There's a void, there's a missing part there. And so we're talking to athletes about that, as I said, weekly with our national team.
Excellent.
And really making that a high priority.
Excellent. Well, I am so glad that you had some time for us today. And obviously, like you said, we'll check back in with you guys in the future as soon as you guys have a little bit more information as we move forward through these obviously very trying times. But I do thank you for taking the time with us and for everything you guys are doing for the athletes from the grassroots through the elite level.
Yeah, thanks, Kent, and very much appreciate the relationship with Counsilman-Hunsaker too.
Thank you very much. All right, Mike, you stay safe,
okay.
And we'll talk later.
Okay, bye-bye.